So I'm on my second Philip K. Dick book novel. I don't know what it's called. And it's getting into the idea of precognition, which makes for a fascinating book, of course. I'm not very far into it. I'm like 10 pages? 30? Halfway? But, yeah, so precognition, and of course, people have varying abilities. It's like psi ability as well. Precognition is different than psi. But, and then I asked my brother, I was like, if you had the option to have precognition, if you had the option, would you opt out? And he thought about it for a little bit, and then he's like, well, what do you mean by precognition? And I said, knowledge of the future events. Knowledge of future anythings. And he's like, I was like, he said, well, that's assuming that there's only one future. In other words, implying the multiverse, you know, the quantum reality that multiverse is peeling off, you know? And it's probabilities, it's not certainties. And then after he said that, he thought a little bit more. Then he said, well, I think I would opt out because that would take all the fun out of it. I was like, yep. I think it would take... You know, it might be fun to try. But it also could get out of hand, I think. And if it has happened in some of these timelines, then of course it has happened, and of course it has gotten out of hand. But it's interesting in the book because precogs are telling things to non-precogs, or at least they're not as intuitive as the precogs are. And the people that they're telling these things to, they start bouncing off of each other, basically. So they're seeing things in terms of probability via precognition. But then the thing about it is, the more precogs that get into the pool and start precognizing into the same area, basically, they are going to start bouncing off of each other, and you're going to get some sort of a mirroring. You could bust yourself down into the Hall of Mirrors really quick and get yourself into some causal loop really quick. So that's the problem that I see with precognition, especially if you have too much of it. Because I think a little bit of precognition is necessary to give a bit of orientation to your present time space situation. There has to be a little bit of the precog stuff, but a lot of it is not necessary. Because then you start living in trying to pick between the endless possibilities rather than floating along correctly into whichever one you're supposed to be going into. Because there always does end up being a one that you're supposed to be going into, but the question is, do you choose yourself into it, or does it choose you into it? I mean, that's what we're all doing here. We're all pre-cognizing, right? It's not like it's a we're so like, everyone is so silly pretending that we just like to pretend a lot. I mean, every time somebody talks about something in the news or what's the future of Bitcoin, you are pre-cognizing. It basically just means thinking. Anyway, peace.